So I've started my presentation by just talking about my background, and I think from the feeling I've got is that a lot of what I'm wanting to achieve with talking about football fits in with the collective sort of approach that Dan was talking about, and this sort of being in FC United and coming from a bit more of a sociology of work, and I'm basically one of those stereotypical Marxist academics that you get. So that's my sort of background. So coming in here as an anti-capitalist, it's just like, oh well, this has got the right vibe for me. So my background, like my PhD that I'd finished, was looking into the sort of conflict between artistic concerns and commercial pressures in the music industry. And now I'm sort of looking into what I want to do next, and a lot of it's football is very attractive for me because it fits in so many sociologically interesting sort of ideas, national identity, culture, media power, capitalism, all these sort of things fit in. And for me, I just like inverting the pyramid, zonal marking, all those sort of things, I love them, all the geekery about tactics. So basically when I saw the football collective thing go around, I was like, I need to put something together anyway so that I can be part of this. So managed to get a 30-minute talk about it, so I don't know if I've done myself any favours, but so like my sort of I come from like the labour process sort of perspective in sociology work, which is derived from Marxism. It's all about the idea that capitalists buy in labour power. It's management's job to convert it into profit and surplus value and things like that. So all the stereotypical Marxist sort of stuff. You get the idea that labour needs to be controlled, managed, value extracted, and conflict emerges from this sort of employment relationship. And a lot of the recent scholarship in this area is trying to link the point of production, if you like, the shop floor, to the wider political economy. And for me, that's quite interesting in football because there's not many studies in the labour process perspective that talk about, the work of footballers. Martin Roderick's work's quite, I think quite inspirational in that sort of field, but the link to like tactics and things like that and wider capitalism is something I want to explore a little bit more. So why can't the labour process perspective really help us analyse footballers? Can you really talk, the main things are, can you talk about exploitation when people are being paid £100,000 a week? It's not exactly what Karl Marx wanted, when he wanted to overthrow capitalism, as all that sort of stuff. So is control not simply just about winning games? If football was just about organising the work, controlling the workers in a way that always got you winning games, Tony Pulis would be the king of the world right now. But and how do performances on the pitch sort of reflect the wider political economy? Is it just simply, if it was just about businesses extracting money, then it's just, wouldn't TV money just be enough for them, so you wouldn't be paying 50,000 quid, you wouldn't be paying all these massive wages if it was just simply about, extracting TV money or whatever. So I'm sort of going to try and work through this because I don't have any data. This is just what sort of like my, sort of me thinking through these things, and there's not much, communication between interdisciplinary boundaries, like we're all in our little bubbles in universities. So a lot of this stuff maybe you'll be able to answer or help me with some of this sort of stuff. So this is just from my little bubble that I'm talking about this. So football clubs, work of footballers, the work of footballers, highly skilled form of manual labour, and within football it's immobile forms of capital. So the football clubs, and they're normally rooted to cities, towns, things like that. And then the labour comes in and out, and it's a very mobile labour market in football. Buying in labour power, to use the Marxist terms and all that, can be extremely expensive. So at the top end of the labour market, you hear these astronomical fees of Pogba and Ronaldo's, Bale's, things like that, which are not just transfer fees. You've got the wages and all the forms of intermediation, which are like the role of agents in this industry is becoming more and more, you know, like publicised as well. So yeah, for me, like deriving, it's not just about extracting economic value. There's also a symbolic dimension towards the work of football. So, for example, I've just gone around, done a Google search of some headlines that I think are quite interesting to illustrate what I'm talking about. So you've got Tony Pulis having a go at Klopp for being stylish, and you know, Roman Abramovich, who's gone through like the last few management sackings for him have been all about winning, but winning in style now. So why he hired Mourinho, we'll never know. But yeah, and then you've got the Sam Allardyce anti-football thing, which goes with the Tony Pulis stuff. You've got Man City trying to recruit younger talent, try to make themselves into a mini Barcelona, and then all the grief that Claudio Bravo got for being signed for trying to trying to play football rather than stop, you know, like not trying, like being more than a goalkeeper. And in the English media, that was sort of represented, you know, in a, you know, stop trying to be fancy, just keep the ball out of the net sort of thing, you know. So to address this, like I've sort of looked to Bourdieu's work. I'm a sociologist, so I know that a lot of you maybe aren't familiar with this, or if you are in sociology, this is, you know, basically telling you things you already know. But his sort of work talked about social life being about competition over various forms of resources, not just economic resources, but also symbolic ones like cultural capital, knowledge, education, things like that, cultural appreciation of culture, things like that, social capital, relationships, you know, people who you know and things like that. People compete to have valuable relationships, and then symbolic capital, which I'm going to talk to a bit more about it. So within football, the skills of footballers can be seen as an embodied form of cultural capital. It's the knowledge, like the knowledge carried in people's bodies, and it sounds a bit arty in that, but basically, you know, like about how people have the knowledge, and that's a very physical job, football, and a lot of it is instinctual and all that. So in Bourdieu's terms, that's a form of cultural capital, and football clubs buy in this cultural capital in order to extract economic value, TV money, promotions, things like that, and also symbolic capital, legitimacy. So like attacking tactics and things like that aren't just aimed at getting money, it's also about doing it right as well, so playing football the right way and things like that. So and also the football field intersects with other social fields. It's really unhelpful talking about field, Bourdieu's idea of field, because it's derived from talking about football fields, and then it just ends up like I'm talking about. So if I'm confusing everybody, don't worry, I'm confusing myself as well. So symbolic capital in Bourdieu's work, it focuses on like how people get legitimate in fields. About how people get legitimate, dominant acceptance in various social fields and that. So the important thing about symbolic capital is it's mediated. So it's cultural intermediaries say that this is how football's meant to be played. So you've got fans, you've got writers, pundits, people like that. All these people saying this is a worthwhile way of playing football. So when Man United basically had over the last few years have had Van Gaal going with possession football, and Mourinho now being a bit more defensive, and it's like that's not the Man United way, you know, like we're wing play, all these sort of things. You know, that's the fans saying this isn't the legitimate way to play football. So it's contested between these things, and within a lot of this work, physical capital, the embodied labour of footballers is contrasted with the symbolic value. So the skills that they have a prestige that footballers trade. So like a lot of transfer fees are based on the reputations, not just, you know, the physical labour that they can do. So and so that links me into, does supply and demand really answer just transfer fees? It doesn't. It's a little bit more about that. So legitimacy in football, I've just marked down a few ideas on what constitutes legitimacy in football. So within winning in style, like using highly valuable labour power, so your skills, your tricks, your unbelievable techers, all that sort of stuff, is highly valued by fans. And attacking football, the dominance of tiki-taka for Barcelona from 2008 to 2012, if you like, and now currently Klopp, and like that sort of German style that got to the Champions League final in 2013, that sort of style seems to be the dominant one now. There's also you can also play crap football but still get like respect. So you've got Leicester, but they weren't. Like they're pretty ordinary 4-4-2, like journeyman footballers and that. But their sort of Roy de Rover's romanticism sort of allowed them to be like accepted. So like now you've got Jamie Vardy's story of coming from non-league to the top. That's sort of now like a romantic story that Leicester City are able to cash in on. And then you've got this whole national legitimacy thing. So you've got the whole all-English team. You've got like if you've got English players, or in any national context. I'm Scottish, so obviously I don't have any national legitimacy right now. And that's contrasted to Sam Allardyce, 4-4-2 man marking, and this whole foreign coaches discourse where it's just like these, like it's basically like these classy foreign people coming in here and telling, like you've seen all the Tony Pulis sort of interviews recently, and it's just, like that sort of contrast there. And a lot of people will say that's anti-football and all that sort of stuff. So so that's legitimacy is normally based on a number of factors, and I've just gone through a few of them there. And like I said, it's contested. It's fans, pundits, people like that sort of determine how these things are valued. And then what I'm linking to as well, the sort of political economy argument is that legitimacy is contested in these football fields. But how transferable is the symbolic capital into these other fields? Because you could say in the field of power, if you like, the economic fields, buying a football club is a way of getting prestige in our ones, in business fields. So how can we see symbolic capital in the football field, in the field of football here, being transferred into other fields? So I'm just going to talk about Barcelona a little bit as well. Few clubs have the sort of romance that Barcelona do. They've become associated with playing the game the right way. Johan Cruyff sort of changes through the end of the 80s to the 90s. Guardiola's reign and all this has basically put Barcelona as a template of how the game's meant to be played. But and in recent years they've moved away from being the unbranded team. Like we're more than a club. We don't need sponsorship, things like that. Now they are sponsored, so you get this whole idea that they're sponsored by Qatar Airways, and there's fan petitions about stopping taking money from Qatar until they treat their workers right. And then you've got the idea of them breaking transfer rules for signing under 18 players. All business practices that are quite unethical. But because of the way that they play it may be protective of their reputation. They may be allowed to get away with doing these iffy things that maybe go against, like a lot of the ideas of the romance of football. So does the symbolic capital protect them within the business fields? Despite the controversies, Barcelona they are still revered. They've got that attacking three, which is now what everybody talks about when they talk about Barcelona. And this is based on a transfer of their football activities onto the field, from one field, the football social world, to the business fields and all that. So from this, there's a number of strands that I'm sort of wanting to pick up going forward, and that's maybe why I'm wanting to present to the collective, talk to a lot of you, to see, where there's overlap in interest, maybe chances for collaboration, and so my main interest is how football tactics as a form of control, like managerial control, have a symbolic effect. So like just what I've been talking about there, and how symbolic capital transfers into the wider social fields. Also, like linked to this is basically how in female football you've got the idea of like there not being any legitimacy or respect within wider football. Like you get this whole sexist discourse that filters its way into the reception of women's football, how they're not able to maybe access the symbolic capital that they should be able to. And then also what I've actually had a few talks about is the idea of the foreign coach as well, and this whole national game discourse. So those are the sort of things I'm hoping to work on over the next wee while anyway, but that's my presentation then, so thanks for listening.
I've just come back from FC Barcelona actually, where we've got a contract with the team, and we were talking to the head coach, Napier, and he was saying it's not about winning, it's about enjoyment, and that's all we tell the players, and that, you know, we don't care about winning. And I just think he's managed with that statement to maybe like get a foot up in the cultural capital, because they're pretending they don't care about winning, but they can, can't they, because they're Barcelona, and they normally win. But is that something? Can you gain cultural capital from that, do you think? From like pretending you're bigger than actually wanting to win?
Well, yeah, I think there's a big relationship to what I was talking about, like in my PhD about music. In music, there's you have to deny that you are interested in money, and if you make money, it's because, well, it's just a coincidence because I'm artistically, I'm authentic in that. So I mean, yeah, you end up in this sort of loop where it's like, are they being honest or not? But certainly with Barcelona, there's an interest in saying we're about playing football the right way, and that's basically, you know, like, yeah, it's accepting that myth. But like if they don't win, he'd be sacked, you know, like sort of thing. So, you know, like obviously there's a front to that I think needs to be a bit unpicked, which is what I'm sort of looking into over the next, well, I don't know.
Did you hear that at the back? Did you hear the question? No, so we probably do need this mic. Can you see the quote thing? It was a great quote. The Barcelona head coach.
Yeah, I just got back from Barcelona, where we do some work with the coaches at FC Barcelona, and we were talking to Napier, who has been there for 46 years, I think he said. And he said that the philosophy throughout Barcelona isn't about winning. Nobody cares about winning. It's all about enjoyment. If people are enjoying themselves, and they can leave. And so I just asked Gavin whether he thought that gave Barcelona a bit more cultural capital. You know, they're already Mescaline club. You know, it's already about the political economy, the political state of the Catalan independence movement. But the fact that, you know, as a Norwich supporter, it's not about enjoyment.
Did any of you say that it's nonsense?
We weren't allowed, we didn't feel that we could, we just nodded.
And the question I wanted to ask you really is just because it's interesting when you introduce your talk on about players almost as proletarians, because particularly in relation to the means of production, just in their job at the club, that's precisely how the wage labour is in one sense. I've always argued that, I've always been laughed at for it, because it is slightly ridiculous, something on £200,000 a week. But just to push that a little bit further, working for a football club, have you looked at mining deeper into employment aspects, work organisation and the labour process within football clubs beyond footballers?
Yeah.
To the rest of the staff potentially, and also ask me the question, is there any basis for solidarity between a footballer and a cleaner in a football club?
Well, yeah, I do treat them as wage labourers, because you kind of, you have to in this sort of sense. And I mean, there are instances, I can't remember them now, but certainly the living wage sort of movement's been like trying to get footballers to demonstrate solidarity to them. I think that's the only, I'm sure that there's some examples that I'm not thinking about, but I haven't really. I'm just getting like I said, this is work in progress. It's basically me having to think about how to approach things. But certainly, the labour process angle I've used just to sort of say there is a distinction between capital and labour, and they are effectively the proletariat, if you like, and there is aspects of class that are interesting in the case of footballers themselves, in that they may be economically very well off, but a lot of the media discourse about footballers tends to be like they're scum or things like that, and that's basically it is a class aspect as well, where they don't have maybe the cultural capital for legitimacy, they're not middle class or whatever, so there is sort of aspects of that which tie into wider social class despite the £100,000 a week sort of thing. So I don't think I answered your question at all, but I need to have a think again about that.
Really interesting idea of use of political economy in sport. Have you considered other forms of sport? For example, I can make this connection because the Glazers own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well as Man United. So the NFL have one of the largest leagues, and arguably bigger than the Premier League, and they have a draft system, so their proletariat workers are drafted, and that draft system is built so the weakest team arguably gets the best form of labour, but it's part of one of the most capitalist nation states. So have you considered amongst all of this whether it's relevant beyond football, relevant beyond Britain, into other capitalist forms of sport or capitalist nations?
Well, certainly, I'll get this microphone. My knowledge of American football is kind of limited to Friday Night Lights, basically, but I do think that I'm very interested in how sport has now become like a capitalist plaything, if you like, and having certainly the notions of ownership and having sports conglomerates covering a variety of sports. I think there is a relationship between all these sort of things, but I don't know the specificities of the NFL. But I do think that the idea of my framework, the idea of these ideas taken from lots of people here put together, I think do have relevance to wider sport, and it is this link to capitalism. At the end of the day, the footballers will come and go, but the system will remain anyway, and all these various systems will work. So I do think there is relevance between all these other sports, but particularly the NFL in America, maybe not so much in certainly less moneyed sports. I think there's a connection between them all, but I don't really know enough about NFL to comment on that. I'm really bad at answering questions. It's very early in the morning.
Have you thought about concepts like spectacle and celebrity?
Yes-ish. But like I said, I'm sort of coming from my background, and I'm basically sociology work, labour relations type academic in the making, and I'm trying to get a feel for some new ideas anyway. So I'd be considering, certainly on that point I was talking about the social class aspects and things like that. I think there is a relevance to celebrity, and I think like a lot of the pop culture, media, communication sort of literature maybe fits in and explaining some of that. So I would consider that.
There's also, and I show my age here, there's also the Chas Pritchard typology a lot of people know about professional footballers in Britain in the post-war period. And there's something about the £1 million a week or 15 million a year, which is really locatable in an extension of the Chas Pritchard typology about the millionaire located rather than dislocated, rich and socially mobile individual. And I think there are some crossovers which we're touching on, I think, Gavin, with the pop music and rock music industry, aren't they? Which I think another Manchester Metropolitan University in Brighton former person, Steve Reddard, used to emphasise very strongly in the 1980s. So I think some of those connections are really important.
Yeah.
Further comment on that?
No. I don't really, but I'm going to note down those comments. So yeah, so I can think about them more. So.
Right, any more?
You talk about symbolic capital. Where have you thought about physical capital in terms of capital moving onto fields instead of or as well as symbolic capital for the players themselves?
Yeah. I mean, my sort of point with embodied. Oh, I'll wait for the mic just in case. Anyway, so I'm moving further forward as I go. Yes, it's a conceptual point really on physical capital. If you're meaning by players themselves, yeah. I sort of treat that as embodied cultural capital, which is, like how a lot of the literature treats physical capital, the ability to labour and things like that, and how that's tradable into reputation and things like that. So embodied cultural capital is how I say physical capital, but yes, completely, yeah.
Thanks, Gavin. Any more time? One more? Well, can we thank Gavin for good ideas?
Thank you.